It's time for Show Me the Franchise.
With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick.
It's time for Show Me the Franchise.
With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick.
Welcome to Show Me the Franchise, the podcast that talks about franchise of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, genres, and types. I am one of your hosts, Tom Stadler, here as usual with Fred, the president of Vandalay Industries.
I usually don't like to talk about my, industrial work, but thank you so much.
I mean, I just want to know if I need to answer the phone, who I need to say I'm working for.
I'm actually taking a nap under my desk right now, so I won't be able to answer the phone.
Believe it or not, Fred isn't at home. Fred, we are definitely into something that I think we've danced around for a while here now, right? And I'm excited to talk about a pretty popular TV show, if some people have guessed already. But
There's hints.
Have we been dropping breadcrumbs all along?
I think they're actually chunks of marble rye that people are picking up.
I think you could definitely say that. Of course, we are talking about the television series Seinfeld today. Arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest TV show of all time. I think some people could argue
I'd give it the best sitcom of all time. I like The Wire. If we're talking TV, The Wire. But no, I would easily give it the best sitcom of all time.
I think there's, if not,
Frasier's scratching the door for me just a little bit.
I do feel like we've actually dropped more breadcrumbs, more of that marble rye for Frasier. But Fred, certainly, while I know you have watched Seinfeld, I have watched Seinfeld. We have brought in somebody today who knows a lot about Seinfeld. Our guest today is Milwaukee comedian James Boland.
Oh, hi.
Hello. Welcome to the show, James.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to be here.
Thanks for
Fun to talk
joining
about
us.
it. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
This is another one of our episodes that were like in the making since last summer. I think this might be the final one because I know I asked you before I went into the hospital.
Oh, right.
Before you got married, which is kind of our big pause on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think this is the final ring in the Infinity Gauntlet of guests.
Shows. Yeah, of guests?
Yes, because because Tom is a great planner. We had
Yeah.
a lot of people in the can to have on. And then, life happened, but now we're coming around to having some of the great people that we always wanted to have on.
That's true. James,
thank you.
What Infinity Stone would you be if you were one?
Oh, now I have to remember the Marvel stuff. What's the red one?
Would that be the reality stone?
There we go.
There we go.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a huge. I have watched some Marvel, and I know enough to be dangerous in a dinner party with Marvel, but I definitely don't know as much as I do about Seinfeld. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Sure.
That's
For
fair.
sure.
Well, I mean, because we're talking about if you're the reality stone, and we're talking about a show about reality because it's a show about
Yeah, it's about nothing. Yeah, which is so funny that that becomes the sort of mythological thing, and it is so much like a show about so many things for sure. But it's like they make it about sort of everyday life. It's like the amplification of everyday life and all the little grievances that come up and how those get sort of expanded, to comedic levels for sure.
Yeah. So I guess tell us a little bit about how you came across Seinfeld for the first time and why it became such a big part of your life.
Well, I mean, it's must-see TV, that whole block of things. But I remember, watching it, and it was in my household, and this is before we could tape record something, that kind of stuff. But I never wanted to miss. It was like that and like X-Files were like the two shows that we would watch every week religiously, and like what interesting, like two sides of the coin where it's like one scared the crap out of me. The other made me the comedian that I am. So I would watch it all the time. And even like in the summertime, like even when it was reruns, I would I remember distinctly like being outside playing basketball, whatever. And I was like, oh, it's time for Seinfeld. And I would run in and turn on Seinfeld. And I mean, some of the stuff definitely went past me, in terms of
Sure.
like understanding the social humor and the social, etiquette that they were making fun of. But it was, it's Kramer and his physical humor that I think brings in most people to the show. I mean, it's just his physical humor. Michael Richards' physical humor is on par with Dick Van Dyke in terms of like how good it is and how much he like took pride in it. I mean, later on, I was his biography recently came out, and they were talking about how he would wear like body armor underneath his clothes and stuff like that, like shin guards and things, because it was so physical. And they would do these takes, and he would just be falling, and I mean, so much of this stuff. So, like knowing that afterwards is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And he is. I mean, he's flailing all over the place.
All the time. Yeah. And to create a character that is so eccentric and strange but so believable is just unreal to me. Like, he's so crazy. Going back and watching it again for the series for the third time, and I just appreciate his like choices that he makes with like verbal, like that, like the like, and all the like, all the little stuff that he does. Like, there's no way that that's written in the script exactly. And I know that they're pretty famous. Like Larry David, yes, famous for doing Curb and then having it all pretty much be improv. But like on Seinfeld, like stuff was written pretty like to the T, like what it was performed. Like there was some variation, but it was pretty close to what was written. And to have like those little like vocal, whatever you would call them, is like amazing to add to stuff for sure.
Yeah, I think you hit on something with like anyone at any age, especially being younger, getting into Seinfeld is you start with Kramer,
Yep,
and then you kind of move to like other characters.
Oh yeah,
eventually,
100%.
like I feel for me, I've made the rounds for who I've said is my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it definitely always starts with Kramer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's a super easy entry point into the series. I mean, Jerry is always kind of, to me, like the worst of the four. And now, like going back and watching Julia Louis-Dreyfus' performance as Elaine, she's just unreal. She's so funny. She has this like, I can picture the mannerism that she has when like she's in a situation where she's like misspoke, or she's like in an awkward situation and she kind of like does it like and her face. It's so funny. It's so good, and she's just so talented. And just to like know like how the stuff that she did afterwards too.
Yeah.
Like she's been pretty much like the most successful of the four. In terms of like doing different things. I mean, obviously like Jerry's like rich beyond rich because of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But B movie, I mean, is that gonna hold up to Veep or like,
Unfrosted?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so.
It is interesting, yeah, that you even bring that up too, because like I would say, the two people who probably made out the best from this are Julia Louis-Dreyfus and probably Larry David.
Yeah, Larry David.
Right.
And like,
Yeah. I mean, he proves, like, I feel like Curb is a spite show. Like, Curb is spite. Like, if anybody ever said that, like, oh, Seinfeld was just as good as after he left, and, it was really other things, and it's like, then he makes Curb, which is arguably probably, like, I don't know, like, maybe, like, the second best sitcom of all time in some ways, right? Like, there's so many iconic things about Curb, and they redefines the genre, too. Yeah, I feel like, in the parlance of Seinfeld, it's definitely a spite. It's a spite show for sure.
I like
Well,
that.
one thing, and I just don't want to forget to say this point. I know we're very early in it, but what's funny to me is you can definitely feel the lack of Larry David in the later seasons. But I will say, season 8 and 9 George is almost proto Larry David Curb in a way, which is kind of funny. Like the ridiculous levels that character gets to are interchangeable to Curb plots. Maybe not as quality of overall story and like jokes, but just the things he gets into, like having the handicap chair, or stuff like that. Or is the fire later? I think the fire is pretty late, where he like pushes a woman out.
Oh no, that's real early.
Oh, that's early.
That's super early. Yeah, and a crazy guest appearance there. Jonathan Favreau is in that. He plays the clown. In that episode, which is like his first like credited role, I think, or something like that, which is kind of crazy.
The cameos are so
the
good.
cameos are nuts, especially with like all of Jerry's like ladies.
Oh yeah,
like it's a who's who of like of actresses. It's amazing.
Yeah,
for sure. I would agree with like I was really curious watching it again, the season 8 and season 9, seeing like what were the big differences. And one of the big differences for me is in the previous 7 seasons, the characters are like insulated, like all of them like love each other and like will like sort of be like root for each other, like Lainey, George, you know, like they'll say these kind of things. And then in the later seasons they like are more like at each other. And they're like kind of loses a little bit of that kind of like spirit of like it's us 4 against the world. Like everybody else is like stupid, doesn't get it or whatever, but we get it, and like we have this thing. And so it wasn't a huge difference, but it was something that I picked up on like subtly. Where like George kind of messes with Elaine, and Elaine definitely messes with George. I mean, the amount of time she calls George an idiot in the last 2 seasons is a lot. If you played a drinking game, you would be under the table. That's crazy.
It's I know, and I feel like that point does come to a head when we get to the finale, and which I'm really glad that we are talking about this after the Curb series finale too, because that's obviously a very big play on the Seinfeld series finale.
Yeah. What a great way to get the last word in on that.
Absolutely. Well,
no spoilers, but
to have. Yeah, I mean, no spoilers. I guess we kind of have to, because we did a Curb episode.
I think Curb wasn't over when we did it.
Wow, it's not. That's ballsy of you guys. Well done. You got to do a revisited.
I think we weren't even sure though if he was going to do.
Yeah, that the last season. This is like 7 years.
Yeah, he would like break it up and like, I don't know if I'll do another one. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, there's a new Curb and it airs next week. Like that's what it felt like for me.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we'll have to talk a little bit about Curb. I think because it was even in our Curb episode, it was impossible not to talk about Seinfeld. They are so tied.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I think they have plot lines in Curb that are Seinfeld related.
I know, and that's where like when we get to the part of like talking about like what ifs and like stuff, we'll have to touch on that, because I mean it was hard for me to think of something different than what they did with Curb in terms of revisiting and like revival, quote unquote.
Yeah. I mean, in a couple instances. But Fred, I know you mentioned too that you have rotated between people in the series as you watched. What was your first exposure to Seinfeld?
Well, you know, it's a struggle on the farm when I was younger. You know,
why is that?
Because, you know, when you want to watch something on the TV, you know, you got to send someone up on the roof, adjust the antenna just right. You got to wrap the tin foil around the bunny ears.
Yeah. Was this in Kansas in the 1930s?
It was in Tawnytown, Maryland. It's a small town that I grew up in until I was the age of 12 or 13 when I made it to the big city in Atlanta. So no, we just had basic television, and really we only got like the main 4 channels. We didn't get like the extended like 12 channels that most people could get. And my earliest memories is just I remember seeing the promos while watching Zoom or Home Improvement, where they were just like, check out tonight, Kramer's doing this wild thing.
Yes, for sure.
But of those shows, I do remember, like, because I feel around the same time, there was like Frasier, there's like Seinfeld, there's Friends. Seinfeld was the only one when I was a kid that I could laugh at. Frasier, it was just like snooty people talking.
100%.
And I've become a fan of the show, Frasier, later in life. But Seinfeld was kind of accessible even at a young age, because like what you brought up, just watching Kramer. And Jerry was probably my number 2, because as you become a comedy fan, I think his stand-up is the most accessible when you're like a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
right.
I remember being on an airplane, and like I had my little portable DVD player later in life, not on the farm, of course, and watching like getting a DVD from Blockbuster of his stand-up and just watching that and laughing like, this is so good. I understand this. I'm on a plane right now. These jokes are killing.
Yeah.
And then I feel like when I was at the end of high school, I remember grabbing from, like, I think it was maybe, you know, like a rummage sale. I got seasons 6 and 7 in DVD, and I watched those just continuously back and forth. And I think when we get to our power rankings, I noticed, not to give away too much from season 7, but it's just because those were like built in for me. But now it's just something I love to like throw on at any season. My trick is I can't look at the description. I just had to kind of jump in and pick a season and follow it through. But it's become a comfort food for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I vacillate between, that's the right word, right?
Yeah.
Frasier and Seinfeld for like late night. It's 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I just want to be in my bed, watch a sitcom.
Yeah.
Between those two, that's what I keep going back and forth with.
It's like the wind down show before bed, right? Like the
Totally.
perfect thing you can throw on. It's not mindless, but it's also just like something you can turn your brain off at least a little bit, and you're just like, oh, I get to enjoy it. Like you said, like the physical humor, but then you also get the jokes too. Like I was watching like some clips, and I just remember like when Jerry gets mad about the car rental, and it's like
for
stuff
sure.
like that. It's
Very pertinent still. Yeah.
oh god, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
I guess for me, so I was a late bloomer into Seinfeld because when I was young and when it was on like live, my dad was the one that watched it, and my mom would watch it with him, and kind of sounded like your wife too when you were talking about that, Gene. So like she hated George. My mom hated George.
Yeah,
like
George,
my dad's like, this is the funniest dude ever. Like I can't believe it. He's like, it's you watch the show for all the stupid shit he gets into.
Yeah, definitely.
So I feel like I always would watch it in passing whenever they would have it on at night, and I would go out in like the living room and they'd be watching it on, and but I was never like sitting there with them and watching the show.
Yeah.
Other than like there's an episode that I will rank in my power rankings because it sits in it. I think it was the first one that really like I was like, okay, that's fun because there's a video game involvement in it. And now
I wonder which one.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that was the first thing I was like, well, George seems okay. You watch the show and you're like, George isn't okay.
No, he's not okay.
He's far from okay. But so I think it actually for me really it was Curb that was kind of my gateway into
going back and
Seinfeld.
watching.
Yeah, because then I was watching that like in high school and college, and I was like, oh, this is really smart. And that was when I started getting into like thinking about improv and stuff. And I was like, well, this is a really fun idea that they have like these script concepts that they can just sort of riff. And I mean, that was how I was making movies with my friends too. Like in school, I would be just write an outline and be like, let's just like come up with whatever. Right?
Yeah, the dialogue doesn't matter as much. Yeah.
Just like we'll practice it, we'll pick the best take and figure it out.
Yeah,
from there.
definitely.
So, but then like as Seinfeld reruns would come on, I'd be at home with like my dad at night, and he would just throw that as his comfort food after like dinner or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd just throw on reruns, and I'd start sitting there and watching them. And I was like, okay, this is actually funny. This is like Curb, and I was like, so that's how I just got into it. And I would just watch all the reruns on TBS, and
the performances. I think for the like rewatching them, the performances, not only the main actors, but hopefully we'll talk about like the side characters are so memorable, and there's so many great performances in that. But they're like big characters. There's big choices that get made. They're funny, and it was. I've kind of there's some people who can like rewatch things over and over, movies over and over, and I've never really been like that kind of person.
Yeah.
But for me, Seinfeld is the thing where like I understand it, right? Where like some people it's The Office, and I've watched The Office multiple times, and I enjoy it, and I get it, but it's not the like it's not the like same way for me with Seinfeld. Like I get so excited to like, oh, wait, he's gonna say this line, and and I like, oh, watch, this is gonna happen, and I get excited for that. Like it's so weird to be so interested in that. But so it's like my understanding, and I can be like, oh yeah, okay, I can get like if somebody watches the same movie, 4 times a year or something like that or whatever. I can understand it through Seinfeld.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is your thesis for thinking like why has the show resonated so much with you, or like why do you think it resonates with so many other people? I mean, I'll certainly open that to you too, Fred, but I'm very curious, like why has this just glommed onto you so much?
I think it's the like. There's a lot of different things in it. I think it's the camaraderie that they all have, all 4 of them have, and they develop, over time, this sense of camaraderie that it is, Friends did it with the couch and the coffee shop and that kind of stuff. It's this, there are shows that are like that. How I Met Your Mother has that sort of like camaraderie of this like core group. But for me, Seinfeld, like the 4 of them and like the escapades that they go through, yeah, but it's like the camaraderie. And then it's, there's so many great callbacks in the show, small ones, big ones, which I love. So there's that. They plant seeds in one season to the next, and like you don't see that in a lot of sitcoms. Like they're not like planting joke through lines through like multiple years, and like you get the payoff like so much later, like that kind of stuff. So there's like the camaraderie of everything, and then it's just like it's the mentality that Larry David has that I think is really kind of great. Is like there's no hugs, there's no lessons learned. They're terrible, and it's unabashed, and it's like, and it's they're gonna yeah, and it's like it's just great. I mean, this is like such a refreshing thing, from all these sitcoms where like they. Even like Friends, you look at it like they have the arc where like, Joey becomes, whatever, redeemed from not being just a Lothario or whatever. And, that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, they don't, they get worse, and I think I wanted to talk about it a little bit, but like for me, Always Sunny in Philadelphia carries the mantle of it and then takes it like, it's like, it is to me, it is the what if Seinfeld continued, right, like that is Always Sunny, like that's what it is, like and that's why I think I appreciate Always Sunny, for that thing, like everybody gets worse and more insane, and but it's still justified in their world. They still find some way in Seinfeld and in Always Sunny to have it be justifiable. It's like, like okay, like their character or their perspective, that makes sense to them. It doesn't make sense to me. Or it's like, yeah, I definitely would love to call this person out for this thing or whatever. I don't get to. And it's the same thing that Curb gets to do, whatever.
For sure. I'm glad you called out the It's Always Sunny connection, because it's something I've always thought about. It's like it's the spiritual success of Seinfeld, and like
100%.
And I'm very fascinated with where It's Always Sunny has gone now too, with the evolutions of the characters, and now that the sensibilities of the comedians in there have gotten a little bit sharper. I think they're a little more aware of what they are doing.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's a whole other episode, but we should talk a little more about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you have anything to add, Fred. But
I would just say I agree with everything you said. And when I think about them and It's Always Sunny, mostly Seinfeld, though, I feel like if there's like the ranking of what's important to each character, it's like they're out for themselves. And then right under there is that camaraderie. Camaraderie. Thank you. And it is funny that like it's kind of that balance when I watch Seinfeld too, where they are in it together. Mm-hmm. But if they can eke each other out for something, they are like, for lack of a better word, bad people, which I love. Like they're not great people. Well, and that's the thing. It's Always Sunny just took to the limit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great example in a later season where Kramer's got a hot dog, and they're walking on the street. It's Jerry and Kramer, and Jerry just wants to pop into the store to get something real quick, and Kramer is super insistent that he wants to go in, and so Jerry is like, no, I'm just gonna be a second, and then Kramer like jams the whole hot dog in his mouth, and like in a just ridiculously comedic way, and then Jerry is just like opens it, he's like, actually no, I'm okay, I'm not gonna go in the store, and like that's the cold open of the episode, and I think speaks a little bit to what you're saying, like I think Jerry's annoyed that Kramer won't let him just go pop in the store and do the thing, and so just to spite him. Yes. I mean, there's so many examples of spite happening in Seinfeld, just so many funny ways. But that's like it's not like ruining in Kramer's life, but it's like, okay, you're not letting me do the thing I want to do. I'm gonna kind of like stick it to you, kind of thing, like egg you on.
It is good. I feel like that's maybe a good launching point though for us to talk a little bit about the development of how this show even got to it, where we even get to this point where it does become a little more about like the camaraderie we're talking about, and then the spite. I don't know. We have to talk about Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld's relationship. That's frenemies. I mean, is that like the accurate description for them? Are they?
I don't know. No, I think that I don't think they're enemies at all. I think they're no, I don't get that sense that they're enemies necessarily. Do you? Why do you say that?
Well, frenemies? I was just thinking like, I don't know. It's sort of like an antagonistic friendship is what I've always kind of gathered about.
I think they're two people who work in a business where they've been very successful, and most people will take their bullshit. They don't take each other's bullshit.
I think that's
kind
true.
of part of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that they probably only view each other as peers.
Sure.
Like everybody, not even other people on the cast and things like that, in terms of like because I didn't know this as much, because I always thought Jerry was just, an actor, and I didn't do as much writing and producing. And apparently like he was super involved with like casting and the writing of it, and he and Larry would be like writing, most of these episodes and things like that. Like he was really, really involved in the production, which I didn't know that Jerry was, which kind of made me respect him more because, I mean, he's, not the best actor, but he doesn't have to be in the show. It doesn't need to be a good actor. He just needs to be, funny. And
it helps that he's playing Jerry the comedian.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Which something that's funny that I wanted to definitely talk about is like Jerry the comedian in the show is a bad comedian.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Like he gets made fun of all the time by George, by Elaine, by Kramer. He gets mocked all the time. Like he thinks he's a good comedian, but like his parents mock him about being. They'll even say, and I didn't realize this as much, but like in the show, they'll like make fun of Jerry the way that we now make fun of Jerry Seinfeld stand up. Like, what's the deal? They say that so many times in the series. Like, what's the deal? George will make fun of him, like, and they'll have like powwows, he and Kramer, about like, we got to get him into like, I think he'd be really good for the, whatever junior, botanist or whatever. I forget exactly what the reference was, but they like have powwows about his career. It's just crazy.
Or his parents always thinking like he needs like financial help is always funny.
Yes.
The parents are my favorite.
Oh yeah.
It's funny though that you bring that up because that is kind of the genesis of how this show even got started. It was Jerry's appearance on Carson that caught the attention of NBC executives, and they were like, "No, this guy's got something." And I guess like even Johnny Carson was like giving him like a thumbs up. He said that gave him like all the confidence.
Yeah,
in the
that
world.
he got the Carson approval or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he got invited to the chair.
That was the thing. If you were killing it on Carson, you got invited to the couch or the chair. Or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he got to meet with NBC, start talking about developing a special at first, which was the whole idea, was that it was just going to be some kind of like stand-up special or some kind of thing. The way I think that Jerry was talking about it is like when they first started developing it, it was just going to be like some kind of like following him with a camera around. It was going to be a replacement for SNL. And that,
so interesting.
Well, just for like a one night off.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, he's just like, it was going to be a special. It's going to take place at like SNL's time slot. And he like wasn't sure like what is it going to be. And he got introduced at a party. He got invited by Larry David's then wife to like come and do this. And I guess like it was like a birthday party, maybe for like Jerry's girlfriend. I'm trying to remember what this story was, but the whole idea was that Larry David like didn't have like any idea what to do for a gift, so he's like, "I'll write a stand-up set."
Oh my god!
Give that to jokes to him. And
I don't want to spoil your next birthday present. Just so.
If I open it up and I get some jokes from
What's the deal with podcasting?
It's but so whatever, they meet at this birthday party because I guess they found out like Jerry was like reading Larry David's jokes, and they're like, this kind of makes sense, we should probably work together, we have a good working relationship. And so they Jerry brought Larry David into the fold and was like, he's the only guy I knew that was a writer, so like I'm gonna have him help me write this thing. And so the NBC executives are like, who the hell is Larry David? Like,
was he writing? He was on SNL for one season.
Yes.
But he didn't really. I don't think he got even a sketch aired.
Well, the story with that, I thought when he was on SNL, that's the inspiration for when George like does the fake. Well, he quits, but then shows back up.
Correct.
Yeah, that is definitely the storyline for that. And it is interesting, like hearing the beginnings of Seinfeld is the exact same as the beginnings of Curb. Right. It's like the first pilot episode of Curb is we're just going to follow him around for this special. All the things leading up to the special don't show the special. The special is the lead up to the special. And it's like the meta-ness of Seinfeld is nuts. There's some things about like the storylines in it, like obviously like inspired by real life. I mean, there's lots of those examples of it. But also just like how things in real life have connected to Seinfeld after Seinfeld.
Oh yeah.
But I want to jump ahead too far.
No, that's okay. But I think it's important to kind of set the tone though, even of like a lot of the characters are based on Jerry is Jerry, right? George Costanza is Larry David.
Yeah.
Kramer is like Larry David's neighbor.
Yeah,
like,
Kramer, which is like so like the connection between the real Kramer and Kramer, Michael Richards' portrayal of Kramer is super interesting. But also, one of the actors who auditioned for Kramer didn't get it, but then gets the part of Kramer in Jerry, the fake TV show in, he's your butler. So like this guy doesn't get it, and the guy who plays Kramer in Jerry is actually auditioned for the part of actually Kramer, didn't get it. And then the real Kramer does start a reality tour of the real Kramer, which then, of course, famously in Seinfeld, Kramer does the J. Peterman reality tour, and he does the bus things. But then that's also nuts because J. Peterman is a real person in real life.
Oh my God.
That is portrayed by an actor as J. Peterman. And the J. Peterman catalog was like, had hard financial times. And J. Peterman, the real J. Peterman, contacted the actor who played J. Peterman and asked him if he would be an investor and be the spokesperson. So the fake J. Peterman is the spokesperson for the real J. Peterman and actually owns part of the J. Peterman catalog right now to this day. And like to think about that like, the fake J. Peterman is buying stories from the fake Kramer that were actually real Kramer stories in the show. And then like the fake J. Peterman is actually is portraying and the spokesperson for the real J. Peterman. That shit is nuts.
It's like a feedback loop.
Name another sitcom that has like that much like just interconnectivity with like reality and stuff like that. No. And then just to have the gall and the audacity to be like, yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna. I thought that the Seinfeld, like Jerry, the show on Seinfeld, was like later, like, oh, they've kind of run out of material. No, it's like the fourth season or something like that. It's like they're going quickly to like that really, really fast. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, it gets me super amped to like there's like so many weird connections in the world of Seinfeld.
And you talk about staying power, it's somehow that's still like watchable and funny today. And if you describe that, I think people would think, oh, well, 20 years later, no one's going to laugh at that. But no, it's still good.
It's also like going back to your like original question of like, why do I love Seinfeld and what got me to it is also like the ability to like catchphrase something, the silent talker, the close talker, the sidler, like everything, all of those like things. You can take some small little thing and you just like repeat it and becomes this inside joke. And they have so many inside jokes and like just with your friends, building those things. And like, it starts by repeating those things that happen. And then in your own life, you have these, people that interact with you and you have these like little like ways to like categorize them or whatever, give them catchphrases. So like the catchphrase ability of like stuff is, the yada yada, like it's
in the dictionary.
It's in the there's a lot of Seinfeldisms that are in the dictionary that did not. The shrinkage one is humongous. No pun intended. But there's like little stuff in that where like, okay, so talking about like callbacks that happen throughout the years, and the baby in the shrinkage episode is ugly, and everybody except for like the four of them are like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so cute, whatever. And they're like, and Elaine's like, what? She can't even look at this baby. They never show the baby. And then she even like second guesses the judgment of the doctor who says it's a beautiful baby, but he has called her beautiful. And so he's like, if this doctor is calling this ugly baby beautiful and me beautiful, am I ugly? Yeah. But then like there are at least 3 other episodes where Elaine, comes across this character and like she shows a picture of this baby that is growing up, and Elaine recoils at how ugly it is. And it's like, you love the baby, you gotta hold the baby, and like that stuff is to me is what makes Seinfeld for me like inspirational in terms of comedy. That was the first time I even like had any experience of like what a callback was, to bring something back. Like that was like mind blowing to me. It was so crazy. I love it.
It's great. It's I know there's just such a lasting, I think, and you're speaking to it right now. We're talking around it too, but there is such a lasting legacy for the show, and it barely got like approved or even got like cleared.
Barely made it.
Yeah. I feel like we have to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah,
Because
the Seinfeld Chronicles, we got to talk about.
We're jumping back and forward a little bit. But yeah, so we had the whole story about Larry David quitting SNL,
Yeah.
but then he was like, came back and pretended he didn't get fired. He said he got one sketch on the air while he was at SNL, and which is like, sometimes it like shows what they know, right? Because you're like,
yeah, and I think just like
Look at Tim Robinson.
Oh, totally, Tim Robinson. Right? I was just watching. John Oliver was talking about the cult of SNL and like how crazy it is that they have this institution that they build up where like they say like, oh, you don't sleep on Tuesdays. That's just like what everybody does. And he's like, I wouldn't. No, that's insane. I would never do that.
Yeah.
And like just some people don't fit into that mold. I mean, how many Andy Samberg talks about how really it just totally derailed his mental health being on it.
Yeah.
And like for however great SNL is for people, it can be really terrible for other people as well and like cause issues.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus
100%
did not get her day in the
oh my God,
at all on there.
That would
She
be
on that weird season with like all the kind of random like kind of big people.
I think so. She was early. She's definitely 80s though, I think.
Yeah, she's 80s, yeah.
I wonder
And
if that was like the Randy Quaid season.
I think it's the one where
Ooh,
like
yeah.
like her and like Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
were like in the reserves and they just didn't know what to do with them and they're like, well, we're just gonna go do other things. And it's like, look at that. It's like you have two huge names.
Oh my gosh, she was on it for like 3 seasons, y'all.
Oh,
Oh jeez.
That's crazy. 57 episodes? That is nuts to
barely
me.
get to see her.
Yeah, she is not featured like she should be.
No, never. If they had any idea, yeah, she would have been like a Kate McKinnon or something like that.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So Seinfeld began as a 20. So then, as they started talking, they figured out right that they were like, okay, this can't be a special. Like, because Gary was like, I can't do this for 90 minutes and then turn this into a stand-up set or whatever, which was like the whole thing. It was like they're going to follow him around and they're going to turn it into a stand-up set. And he was like, this is a ridiculous idea. He's like, but maybe what we could do is turn this into a series. Like,
yeah.
and then we'll have like little things that inspire like stand-up, which you see at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah.
So,
which the stand up at the beginning of the episode further like adds to the theory that he's a terrible stand up comedian in the show. And because the stand up in the show is so weird. It does every once in a while it will relate to the theme of the episode. That's to me is a real lost opportunity in the series. Like when we talk about like lost opportunities or things you would change, like if it could be tighter, if the stand-up could be tighter and connect to the theme of the story, that would I think would just be like kind of the icing on the cake for me. Like the stand-up is it's just bad.
The ones that a lot of times connect to the actual episodes, I'm pretty sure are like some of the ones that he actually will use, like in his old school stand up. Like I know like the one where it's he's trying to hit on the flight attendant, and that one he's using a lot of his jokes. But I do agree most of them are not like the tightness and on-parness that I'm used to from like the old school Seinfeld jokes.
it's definitely, I mean, it's a nice like stage setter for the each episode, but it's also like, yeah, I know what you mean though. It's like it
does establish that he's a stand-up comedian. Okay, that's fine and everything, but you know, it is to me it's like kind of, I mean, the music, the theme music itself, which is nuts that every single one is different and unique. That is they had a guy, he would watch the episodes and he would play along with it, and the theme song and the music becomes like another character because it is not just like the same, you know, thing that gets played, you know, like which was happening for all these other sitcoms, you know, like the outro music to a commercial break and the intro music from a commercial break would all be like sort of the same. And to have somebody like, and it's all done on keyboard, which is kind of crazy too.
that's kind of fun. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
He's having dinner.
Yeah,
Go into a scene.
yeah. Exactly.
For some reason, the intro outro that I was thinking of was "Mad About You." For some reason, there's a little piano.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Mad About You. I was thinking about like, you know, some of the other like classic sort of 80s sitcoms.
Yeah.
Would have been fun if they had a sincere intro. Just like, you know, some upbeat sitcom music, you know, opening the doors and they kind of crash together at the same time.
It's Jerry.
Yeah.
So they eventually developed a 23-minute pilot titled "The Seinfeld Chronicles." So this is basically fully credited to Jerry and Larry David. And then it was developed by NBC executive Rick Ludwin. And that what I didn't know is when they went to talk to Castle Rock Entertainment, first person they met with was Rob Reiner, which I had no idea.
He fought for the show. I mean, honestly speaking, without Rob Reiner, Seinfeld would not have continued.
Yeah.
He like basically put his reputation on the show, which is nuts.
Which, I mean, if you're going to listen to somebody, you're going to listen to the guy that, like, I mean, Spinal Tap became such a smash success. I think just a lot of folks, like...
Yeah, I mean, Rob
Reiner time.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Reiner was like, was throwing his weight around a little bit. But for like, I mean, if you're putting your weight around like Seinfeld, Larry David, Christopher Guest, these kind of people, like, that's pretty awesome. Like, I mean, I feel like that's because of him we can say thank you. So thanks, Rob Reiner.
But my problem with Reiner is, though?
Oh, no.
What? He's a Nepo baby.
Oh, you don't like that? Being a Nepo baby yourself?
You're just like, Carl's the superior Reiner.
Carl, Mel were my guys.
Oh, my God. That's funny.
Carl Reiner is very funny, though.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So the pilot was first screened to a group of 24 NBC executives, and it was in early 1989, and it was not well received. So,
yeah, the second button. That's the big talk between George and he. The diner is like, the second button of your shirt, if it's too high or too low, which I'm going to tell you this, though. I have thought about that, not a weekly basis, but probably like a monthly basis when I've got a shirt that like the second button is like not in the right spot. It's too high. You can't button it all the way. Mm-hmm. But then like if you don't button it, it's like too open.
Yeah.
Like it is crazy that like that was like that was the conversation that they opened the show with. Like that was like the crown jewel. Like this is how we're gonna showcase ourselves to the world. We're gonna talk about the second button. Looking back on it, it's prophetic. But what the hell were they thinking in terms of getting on stage?
They had one of the producers. His name is Brandon Tartikoff. Characterized it as too New York, too Jewish, is what he said.
And he had a great career, that Tartikoff. He knew what he was doing, yeah.
NBC Research Department memo summarized the pilot's performance among the respondents as weak, as in quotes. When NBC announced its first 1989-1990 primetime schedule, and this was for May 1989, the Seinfeld Chronicles, which it was titled at the time, so that ended up becoming the name of the pilot, but that was the name of the show. Was not included. The show supporters did not give up on that, though. So it turned out that they had a special budgeted for Bob Hope because he had like just specials rotating.
Yeah, Bob Hope specials,
Yeah, and they had one budgeted for the season. It got canceled, so it opened a slot for Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So it had a chance to air, and it first aired in July of 1989.
Yep.
And they basically gave it 4 episodes for that series.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are like Kramer's, is different. Like, well, the first episode, you don't have Elaine at all. Mm-hmm. And that was a big note. I don't know if it was Reiner who gave the note or if it was the other executive who like sort of stood by it. It was like, you got to have like a strong female lead. Mm-hmm. And, and obviously having connection to SNL with Larry David and like she is... Without her, the series, it just doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have, and the whole like storyline throughout it that like they became friends after having a relationship, and that storyline too that they explore, without having that, like, I mean, you kind of see how terrible it is in Jerry, the show in Seinfeld, where the woman character is just like there because Jerry's kind of wants to sleep with her, kind of situation, and it's how terrible that situation actually is. And the other thing that I noticed going back and watching the Seinfeld Chronicles is it's very much a stage play. Jason Alexander had and does have a history of stage work, and he is a fantastic stage actor, and that's like, it seems like that's what it sort of looks like, right? There's a lot of talky in the thing, and the way that they're acting is very much like on the stage, but like the camera's so close, you don't need to and it just doesn't really work. It doesn't play as well, which is interesting, because later on in one of the episodes that is very famous, the sea was angry that day, my friends, his whole monologue about them being a marine biologist, which is funny because he wants to be an archaeologist and he wants to be a marine biologist, and he pretends to be a marine biologist. But that just came out recently in an interview where Jerry was talking about that they didn't have that monologue for George, and he memorized it in like 30 minutes. The one where the golf ball hits in the blowhole, and he's like, pulls out. It's in front of a live studio audience. He like memorizes a 2 or 3 page monologue or something like that, and like that just a testament to Jason Alexander as like a stage actor of being able to like, okay, I'm going to memorize this thing. He just crushes that monologue. I mean, I remember that phrase, "The sea was angry that day, my friend." So good.
It is very good.
Mm-hmm. That was also a nice connection, Jason Alexander being on Seinfeld, because I feel he was kind of king of the PG kids comedy too, like Dunstan checks in, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
The Return of Jafar.
Mm-hmm. He talks about having this like main character energy, like in acting school. Like he wanted to be Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, and he wanted to be the protagonist and the main character. And basically his acting teacher was like, I know you want that, you're not going to get it. So you might as well, take your talents and keep doing it because you are talented, and persevere because, but you're not going to be, Romeo and Juliet.
Sure.
I can't relate to that at all.
Yeah. But it's amazing because he does give that main character energy on Seinfeld, in a way that's very complimentary to Jerry. And I mean, maybe that's the kudos to Jerry that like he does allow space for others to shine in that show, which is kind of a testament maybe to his ability to like let the other three, really shine where he doesn't maybe need to, which is kind of great.
Yeah, he'll sometimes get, weird with it, but he's generally the straight man calling out people
No,
on
100%.
what the craziness they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. The sarcastic comments, the like knowing looks. He plays the audience surrogate in often, in the show, which is needed, I think, when you have characters that are that like sort of wild and off the wall.
I mean, there are just so many over the top characters in this show.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so crazy. I mean, and I think that George almost stands among them is like, it's a credit to Jason Alexander.
Nice.
What did you say?
He said stands among them. I said Costanz.
Stands among them, yeah. Can't stand you. Can't stand you.
I didn't actually capture a lot about the casting, but I'm kind of interested. I don't know if you have anything on that, James, of just how Jason Alexander, Michael Richards, and them came into the fold.
Well, I know like Jason Alexander auditioned and really viewed the show as like a buddy show. Like it was like he and Jerry were like the primary, and that famously leads to him getting upset because there's one episode where he doesn't get a storyline in it and he threatens to quit. Jason Alexander threatens to quit. And he talks about it later on, saying that like, it was his ego got in the way and he shouldn't have done that. But David talks about it as how like it changed the way he thought about the show. And you see it later on. There's like, even if it's just a little thread line, every character, all 4 of them get something in an episode. And I think that does add to the camaraderie thing, where, they each get something, a tie-in to one other thing or whatever. And that's where, like I was going to mention, there's a Instagram that I love is Modern Seinfeld. And basically their pitches for like what modern Seinfeld episodes might be. Right. And it's always like a plot for every one of the 4. Like that's the quintessential Seinfeld motif, is like everyone gets like, there's an A, B, C, and a D. And Larry talked about how like that was really hard to write for in a 25-minute, format. Sure. But that kind of made them be better writers and be better at it because they really couldn't slough off a character. They had to include everybody. But that, like for like, Julia definitely was not cast in the first episode. Right. Was sort of afterwards. And you can see like she does in those first 4 episodes play sort of just like, oh, I'm just the girlfriend to Jerry, and it's so great when like the second season comes and they have the complexity of like being friends and breaking up and still the slide, they slide back into it, like that that kind of stuff. But then she starts to grow and get more of a placement. And same with Kramer. I mean, Kramer is like he's kind of a scary weirdo. In the first season, the first like 5 episodes, or he's kind of like, this guy's really. I mean, he's creepy in some ways, but it's like creepy lovable in the like final seasons, as opposed to being like, oh, is this like guy gonna like kill Jerry and like wear his clothing, like, and just become Jerry, or like
he's very much like the intense friend you have who like. He's not the problem. It's the other people he brings over to your house.
100%
are the like scary people who are the
Bob,
problem.
Bob Sacramento, Lomas.
Jim's good.
Yeah. No, he's good. Yeah, just friends a little bit weird. Yeah.
It's just always funny that just Kramer always gets like the completely outlandish plot point though too, or storyline in each episode of like when he gets like the Merv Griffin show set up.
I just watched that episode like 2 days ago, and it's great, but it could only happen in the later seasons. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the thing where it's like in any other sitcom, it would be like the jumping the shark kind of thing. But like somehow they've laid the bed of the garden, and he can like that plot point can like live in that garden, and it's like not that out of place.
Right.
But it is nuts. But I love reprimanding Jerry, because that's the same episode where Jerry is drugging the woman to play her toys.
Oh yeah.
And then Jerry and George do it, and then Elaine does with the Easy Bake Oven. And then like there's the big reveal, like we're gonna retool, and they come back to the Merv Griffin, and then Newman is the sidekick. I mean, it's so good. There's so many parts of that episode, but yeah,
it's great. I think it's good thing you called out though too with like Elaine, because I think when you remove the sexual tension between like, oh, could her and Jerry be a will they won't they or something like that, it allows them to just sort of like live their lives and be like, yeah, they're friends, like whatever, like they all are kind of not great people who go about their lives, and I don't know,
but it does allow them to speak about relationships from both sides of a particular dichotomy, man and woman kind of situation in the 90s. And I mean, there are things like, I think it's important to put Seinfeld also in a modern context. Like there's things that that are maybe a little bit problematic, but like there's literally not a show, movie, or anything that doesn't have problematic moments in it. The one thing that I do find that is interesting is that they always put the main characters in that they're like bad people. And so like there's some like there are actually a lot of representation of LGBTQ characters that actually I mean that famously Kramer gets beat up by the 2 gay guys that with the AIDS ribbon,
right. That's right.
And in that episode, and why don't you want to wear the ribbon? It was like that was a phrase, a catchphrase that I would think about. And then those guys come back in a later episode and they steal the armoire.
Yeah.
And they bully Kramer, and like so it just also goes a little bit against the like typecasting of that kind of character of being sort of weak or whatever, and they are they kind of turns on his head a little bit, and I'm not going to give him like flowers for doing that, but but it is interesting that they kind of play that up, and they're like there's obviously the catchphrase like that there's anything wrong with that, like that kind of stuff. So they kind of position themselves as being terrible. I mean, obviously Jerry Seinfeld himself is like he's problematic as a person in terms of like his relationships and like in dating younger women and like but I think that's like a part that happens, and I would be obviously Michael Richards has that really terrible down moment and really racist moment where he snaps and breaks at an audience member and those kinds of things. And I mean, it is really interesting in sort of talking about that. Like he basically removed himself from all entertainment and was kind of like and he actually did like went to therapy, and he's like, if that's where I went to in that moment of stress, like obviously that speaks to where I was and who I was as a person, and like that's not a good thing. And like he actually like did things and tried to work on himself, and whereas we sort of see some people Louis C.K., who like, I'm gonna make a stand-up special about like, you guys all know my kink and like that's unfair. Like I'm the victim. It's like, just get the hell out of here, dude.
Yeah.
Like and it just makes me like not want to watch any Louis C.K. things. And but with Michael Richards, I think there's the context of like what he did afterwards. I think helps. But Seinfeld itself, like there is, the representation of Mickey, and like that character, and people don't know that he's a little person, and like he gets multiple guest starring roles, like his like there's a lot of episodes, and Michael Richards talks about how that was his favorite part of the show, working with the actor who played Mickey. Yeah. And how physical they could be, and like how like the play off of each other, which you'd be surprised. You'd think like it would be Newman, like right. But like Newman, he would get flown in
from East Lasorna.
He would get.
Come on,
nice work. That's good.
Man, around that right time too. There. Yeah.
But yeah, he would get like flown in as a guest star, and like he would do his parts one take almost every single time. One take.
I believe it.
And then he would leave.
Yeah, I think we got to definitely talk about a lot of the side characters here too as we really start diving into it. But yeah, you covered a lot of ground there, James, that I think is all like super, super like important to this too, because it makes me think. I've been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer recently too, and it's like I think even with like the least progressive actions, like there's always stepping stones in a lot of shows to make representation matter. And it's like, no, were they actively trying to do all these things? No, but at the same end, it's like it does open a door to be like, well, if you can get that in a big show like Seinfeld, well, then somebody else can take that a step further and actually make a statement about it into something else, because you've already kind of laid the groundwork for them. So it's like, in that regard, I think you definitely do get that. I know we've kind of jumped around a little bit, which is okay. I think it's very in the spirit of Seinfeld to not be linear in this thing at all.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get it'll all come together at the end.
Yeah. Like 3-story beats, kind of like a herald.
Yeah.
We're getting into the crux of everything here too. I don't have a lot left to talk about, like the production of the show. It didn't come back until July 5th of 1990 because it received a high enough rating on reruns. They were like, okay, I guess people are watching this. Let's give it a second season. And it was,
which wouldn't happen today, right?
No,
no.
Never. This would have got canceled.
100%. It would have not got past the pilot.
No,
sure.
They would have been like, "What is this? This is crap."
Yeah.
They definitely, and I know this wasn't even in like Wikipedia or anything. And I was leaning on that a little bit, but they talked about like how fortunate it was Seinfeld came at this time, because it was at a time where there was just like nothing else. Like it was like Cheers was running, and that was kind of it. It was a dead period in terms of like sitcoms and everything. So it gave it a chance to like grow and thrive from there. And they just said, and they were like, it's popular amongst young males, which is like, that's a super desirable crowd. Could talk about that and many other things and aspects of today right now, appealing to young males. But it's a very desirable demographic. And so the show got it. And a couple years later, from seasons, it started from like not being highly rated, got to 25 by season 4, got to number 3 by season 5.
Wow.
And then finally became the number 1 show in viewership during its 6th season in 1994 and 1995. That is an incredible climb in not a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the same time that Fred, you got into it, right? Season 6. It's not a coincidence that you took it to number 1.
Hey, you're welcome.
Put that DVD on and they're like, boom, we're number 1. We gotta rig in these
ratings.
Yep.
But like, it's a pretty meteoric climb.
It's pretty wild. And you think about it, it is true. It would not happen nowadays. Even with the slew of like popular shows, being canceled after a couple of seasons, not getting any sort of sense of finality, or that, it is amazing that, the seasons, aside from the first season, which is very short, they're over 20 episode seasons. There's 180 episodes altogether, over 9 seasons. Like that's a lot of material, to put on a sort of a sitcom kind of feel. And, it is, a a long time ago, I really wanted more episodes. I was like, oh, wouldn't this be? I mean, obviously, then like Curb kind of takes the place, and you kind of feel like, okay, I got what I needed from like more episodes. But
Yeah.
now the more and more that I think about it, the happier I am that they made the decision to end on top, and to end on their own terms, as opposed to having a real big decline in the show and the quality of the show, because it really doesn't, like season 8 and 9 without Larry. So Larry leaves in season 7. He almost left in like season 1.
Wow.
He was like, if you don't give me what I want, I'm leaving, and they caved, which is really crazy to think about what you just talked about in terms of the early seasons and how it really wasn't that well received. For him to like put his his ego
Right.
on the line there, and like, I mean, if they would have been like, fine, leave, I mean, he could have been nothing, like he would have had nothing.
Right.
But then, I mean, I think after they cave, it gives him a lot of leeway. I mean, going into the famous, I think it's 4th season where they do the contest, and it's interesting because Jerry's like famously a clean comic, but they smoke a lot of cigars in Seinfeld, a lot. I don't know if you noticed that, like watching it.
That's like a big, like they smoke cigars more than they'll like have drinks.
100%, yeah. And not just Kramer, like Elaine smokes cigars. There's a really great episode where she comes in and she's sort of like king shit, and she's like smoking the cigar. She puts her feet up on the table, and but like, yeah, like even Jerry and stuff. So that's kind of a weird thing that when I went back and I rewatched it and stuff. But they do drink a little bit, but they kind of go back.
Hennigan's.
Hennigan's, that's right, for the smooth. Like Kramer does that great bit about it, but they have some inconsistency about whether Jerry is like a straight edge sort of teetotaler and him drinking, which is kind of interesting. Like they never really quite pin that down, which is, I think, I mean, maybe that's a little bit nitpicky from me, but it'd be like, I think that just goes to show that maybe Jerry's character wasn't as like much of a focus, like them needing to have those kinds of things pinned. But the contest is like such a the way they talked about that sort of sexual thing is kind of a little bit reminiscent almost of like the censorship era in like the 1920s, where like they talk about it, it's the contest, like I'm out, and like, you kind of know. And when I was a teenage boy, like I kind of loved it. It was like, it was bawdy, but it was like not like they weren't like being crude about it, right? They got it past the censors and stuff. There are stuff that I'm just like, how did this get past the censors? Like, all right.
What was incredible about that episode is they talk about masturbation without ever using the word
100%. Yeah, exactly. And that's apparently, another Larry real true life story that he and his friends, did or whatever. But yeah, so that sort of, I think widely is looked at as kind of like them coming into their own. Like they take that sort of subject matter, and it's so sort of novel, and of course including Elaine in it, and how well she does with it, and like, I don't know, it's a great episode for sure.
I'm just wondering if that's something I saw, because there's so much stuff like that I saw when I was younger that just went right over my head.
Oh, 100%.
The one that's not a TV show, but I always think about is There's Something About Mary, the hair gel.
I
just remember watching that like, I don't know what's going on, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's that.
You picked up on something though that I did want to at least call out, and that was that it did become like 20 episodes, right? And you're like, oh, I wish there were more episodes. And that feels like a lot of like discourse right now about TV. People are like, I miss the shows that would give you 20 episodes to explore like these characters. Then you have an opportunity to get all these like weird side characters,
little moments. Yep.
Right. You get these little moments, but it's also like, it's interesting that you did have all this time, and then you don't learn that much about Jerry other than like his sort of like habits, right? Other than like his drinking habits or anything, which maybe it doesn't exist. It's sort of, but it does open up all this world for us to expand. Like, what is Newman all about? What is Peterman all about? What is Frank Costanza?
Oh man,
yeah. I mean, Frank Costanza was definitely, along with Kramer, like growing up, I loved his. I mean, Jerry Stiller is an incredible comedian. He's so funny. Apparently he had this sort of mannerism when he was remembering his lines, where his eyes would sort of go up, like roll up in the back of his head, and he would like recite, and like that like pretty much became like a character trait for Frank and his his loud outbursts. And then you sort of see that in George, his getting very angry, it's that in the Serenity Now, all of these like mannerisms, but Frank Costanza and George's mom, Estelle, yep. She's in more episodes than Frank is.
I believe it. Yeah.
She's in earlier.
Sure.
She starts off earlier. Crazily enough, a little bit of trivia. The side character with the most cameos.
Oh.
Any guesses? Who do you think it is?
It's not Banya, right?
No, it's not Kenny Banya for sure.
Oh.
Love me some Kenny Banya though.
And it'd be too obvious to say Newman.
Not Newman.
Yeah,
Frank is in more than.
I would have guessed Banya too, but I'm like, was it? Oh God, no, I don't know. Who is it?
It is the cashier lady of Monk's Cafe.
Oh yeah,
fun. That's a good one.
She's in a lot of episodes, but she does because she will say like a word or two every once in a while.
Kind of like the Silent Bob of the
Yep.
Seinfeld.
Yep,
universe.
she's like in there, when they're in the booth, she's in the, she's there. So she's credited as the most guest starring premiere appearances or like credited appearances.
I wonder if he gets good residuals from that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure she's dead.
No, I mean like back in
The
the
estate.
day,
Oh, the
because
estate.
like she is in so many episodes. And
Well,
like,
I mean,
plus
speaking of that, the
syndication.
Soup Nazi said that like he like could have put his kids through college because basically like with the finale, like coming back in the finale, and he was talking about how Larry, yes, Larry wanted to do that style of show, but he also said basically that Larry was like, I want to get as many people who made the show airtime, because not only just like show them and give their characters another like day in the sun, but also like that it would help them financially. And the guy who played the Soup Nazi was like, yeah, that the residuals from Seinfeld were like enough to like put my kid through college.
Yeah,
which is wild to think about. I mean, like Larry and Jerry are billionaires because of the show, basically, which is wild.
The guy that always the thing about in this situation though is the guy from Cheers, Ratzenberger, because he's in Star Wars, he's in Superman, he's in the Toy Story movie, he's in all of Cheers, and I think there's more, but like he's got a little piece of all those pies.
Yeah, those little pies. Yeah.
just collecting residual checks until the day.
Oh, yeah, another check here.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. It's definitely great though. I think that's something I do want to talk about too, because we do expand. Like you said, you kind of laid the groundwork here. Like you do expand the universe a little bit. You don't get to the Merv Griffin show until you start establishing that Kramer does a lot of like weird shit.
Yeah,
for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You don't get to George sleeping under his desk. When does that happen? What season?
Season 8.
Yeah, season 8. Yeah, season 8.
That was the example I was trying to think of when I said the fire. It's the sleeping under the desk and the little motorized wheelchair.
He does call in a bomb threat. So because Steinbrenner is there with his grandkids, and he's calling, and this leads to one of my favorite callbacks of all of Seinfeld. So George is underneath the desk, and he's got the phone, and he's talking to Jerry, and Jerry's like, Uncle Leo? And like that is so great because Uncle Leo is one of my favorite side characters for sure. Like up there with Frank Costanza, like his presence, like what else is Uncle Leo in that you would know? Nothing. But it's like he's so iconic. But every time they call that back, it's always when somebody on the other line who like wants something, needs something, is in a terrible situation, and Elaine or Jerry will be like, Uncle Leo, and you're totally messing with them. They're the same thing. They're like poking at him, like totally effing with them, and I just love the Uncle Leo thing. Oh, yeah. It just makes me so happy.
I do love that moment when he's under the chair, the little kid who's like trying to have the conversation. She's like, "Hi, my name's Kevin."
Yeah.
Or like,
I don't care. Get out of here, kid. And then the dog comes by. And then, well, crazy enough about like talking about casting and like George Steinbrenner, they actually like flew the real George Steinbrenner out to read the lines initially, and he was so bad that Larry David had to fire him.
Oh man!
And then, of course, Larry David does that. I mean, and Larry David does a lot of, almost always, if it's a male voice, like that's like unbodied like voice, it's almost always Larry. He also is in like a couple of like commercials, like on TV or whatever that they do. But like, playing Steinbrenner and like having the back, like what a great gift. Like, sure, it would have been funny if George Steinbrenner was on it, but it's so great that like you just see the back of Steinbrenner. It's Larry's voice, but it's like this,
You completely read my mind. This is totally what I wanted to pick up on too, because it's like, for how much Larry David is like influenced this show, he's not in the show, like other than doing the voiceover,
voiceover
or like other
things.
people.
Of course, the Man in the Cape.
He is in the Man in the Cape
That's true.
that talks to Frank.
Yeah, that's true. But I love the character of George Steinbrenner. I mean, I'm a huge baseball fan.
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
So I think it was always like hilarious that George ends up getting a job with the Yankees, and it's just like, how did this guy get here?
Well, and how like the buffoonery of it, and like there's the episode where George, he's pretending to be from out of town because he meets that woman who is like a part of the travel welcome bureau of New York, and then she's like, "Well, you could never live here." He's like, "I'm thinking of moving here because she wants to break up with him because she doesn't think it's going to work because he lives in, where Tyson Chicken is or whatever that is, in like Purdue or whatever." So he pretends that he's going to move there, and she's like, "You're going to get eaten alive." So he pretends to like re-rent his apartment, but yada yada. And he's like, then Steinbrenner is like calling the Tyson Chicken guy, right?
Yada yada in your own description.
Yes, yep. I yada yada my own description. And he gets traded. George gets traded to Tyson Chicken. For the Yankees, and the Yankees get some fermented chicken alcoholic drink. That's the thing, right? But Steinbrenner is, he's got that, he must be pretty important. If he's going to Tyson Chicken, he must be pretty important. I can't let go of George.
The physicality of that performance is like from the back is almost chickeny.
Yeah,
too.
because it's also not Larry David too. It's like a different person. So like that's also like so funny that met him. It's like definitely not George Steinbrenner. It's definitely not Larry David. But Larry David is doing the voice. And he's got big hands. His hands are humongous. Like and he's always gesturing all the time. It's so nuts. And the George slowly walking away when he's like he's yelling and stuff, and it's just like
I love the calzone episode.
Oh, the calzone. Love the spicy calzone, George.
But I think my theory though, even with like Steinbrenner though too, is just how Frank Costanza like will work with anybody on the show. It's like he's a perfect foil, and like because this is not gonna make my top episodes, I don't think. But when he's sitting down with Steinbrenner, and it looks like they're all upset because they think George is dead, and he's just like shaking his head, and then he like starts bitching at him about a trade.
About the trade, man. Yes, 100%. That's how George gets the job in the first place. He talks. He's doing the opposite. It's the episode where George is doing the opposite of what he normally would do, and he normally would have never. And he like talks crap to Steinbrenner about the Jay Buhner trade.
Yeah,
and he gets a job because of it.
Yeah,
the secretary to the travel, to this traveling whatever manager, that he gets. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that are, of course, wild and would never happen and could never happen, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. They're all like wonderful and funny and ridiculous, and I just love it. I mean, it's.
Do you think because the show is so based or so tied to like you've talked about it being meta, like we've talked a lot about like the reality that comes into it. Do you think because it has that grounding of like kind of being based on real events that because when it does have these zany kind of plot lines, they almost feel like they work because you kind of know there's some element potentially of truth to some of this stuff?
I think so. I mean, Festivus was one of the writers. That was his family did that. His dad did that.
That's what I remember from watching like the behind the scenes on the DVDs is usually any of these really weird things was a writer like this happened to me. And so that's why plays into being zany but also like believable, because like I think we all have stories in our lives that like sound unbelievable because of certain quirks people have.
Right.
Yeah, and I think because they all take each other's stories and little nuanced stories seriously, like the groundedness of the coffee shop and the conversations that come from the coffee shop, allows everybody in the world to like take the stuff seriously. And so when you're watching, you take it seriously, you know, and that I think helps, you know, because there is like these grounded moments of them just talking and those kinds of things that balance some of the zaniness. But yeah, I think because a lot of the stuff is rooted in whether it's Larry's life, Jerry's life, whatever, or other writers, famous Spike Fierstein, who is was a writer on that show, and then he went on to like MTV fame, and you know, I believe he wrote for the Chappelle Show as well.
Spike. Oh, wait a minute. I think you might be right, because there was like one specific collaborator that Dave Chappelle worked with on Chappelle's Show.
Yeah.
And
I know Kroll worked on Chappelle Show, which is always interesting to hear which sketches Nick Kroll wrote for the Chappelle Show.
yeah, no, I think it's Neil Brennan was like the big.
Yeah, Neil Brennan.
Neil Brennan wrote on Seinfeld?
No, he didn't.
He was like the big collaborator on Chappelle's Show.
I knew that, yeah.
Yeah, but like I remember Spike TV was like that the thing, and like it was kind of like Jackass, a little bit, but it doesn't matter. We don't need to spend any more time on Spike. But he did write the Soup Nazi episode.
Okay.
So that was a actual person, right? So once again, we talk about like these are rooted in real people. Yes, Kramer is nuts and insane and does insane things, but he is ultimately connected to a real person who did a lot of weird things, you know. And it was like, I mean, I also just look at Kramer as like the person who's poking the edges of existence. Like, you know, I'm not going to take anything for granted. Social mores, whatever, social like pleasantries. I'm going to try it. And like, ultimately he's like really, really interested in the world and like doing new things and trying new things, which is, I mean, if you look at like the episode with he and Newman where they try to go to Michigan to to recycle the stuff, and he's got this whole thing like, I've done it all before, I've done all the calculations, Newman, and Newman's like, that makes Newman want to do it even more, and then finally they crack the code because the Mother's Day UPS trucks goes, and they don't have to rent the truck, so that makes all the numbers work. And that gives Kramer a history, right? Like that he's always like scheming, he's always trying new things, he's always doing different things. And like that makes sense. Like they are zany, but also like he kind of is this really inquisitive character who wants to try new things.
Yeah. But I think that goes to your point that you made earlier too, of like the show never feels like it jumps the shark, because I think some of these moments always kind of seem believable within the reality that it's built, right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I mean, arguably, if there's anything that people thought was a jump the shark, and this is over, like beating the term, I think, at this point, but probably the finale, right, where people were like, "Oh, that's kind of a letdown," and what I was expecting or hoping for. But yet it drew like 70-some million viewers. Like networks would kill for that kind of exposure at this point.
I know that there's a lot of people who think it's a bad finale. I think it's a great finale.
Yeah.
It is a great finale. They go this whole time, being rude, being unkind, being petty, spiteful characters, and their undoing is that very same thing of like, laughing at a guy getting robbed, and then all of those characters, like, I mean, what a great way to like showcase all the amazing characters throughout the whole series, and to put a pin in the ethos of like no hugs, no lessons learned. Like they go to jail,
and they're like having the same conversations in jail,
and it's the second button. That's the conversation that they end on, is the second button. They talk about, and then George says, "Haven't we had this conversation before?" I mean, it is a fantastic finale. I know, like it doesn't provide like resolution. It almost allows them to be like mythical creatures, right? You never know. They could get released. They could have other episodes or things like that. You never know, but like, it just leaves it, in a way that's like, I think it's perfect. I mean, and I know, speaking of Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm finale, that he kind of throws it on its head and has a similar kind of trial and things like that. And he gives, a different take on the jail thing. And arguably, I love it. I love the finale that it happens, and it's perfect for Curb. But I still think I prefer the Seinfeld finale.
Oh wow!
I mean, to like literally cap, and like how baller is that? That you're like, because Larry comes back for the finale, he writes it, directs it. He's like his whole thing. And then to like end on that same conversation about the button, I mean, that's iconic. Like that's Bob Newhart show like worthy of like tie-in and connection.
Yeah.
Where like wakes up and he's like, in the the dream of the other show or whatever. So the character's a dream of the character that he was in the other show. That's fantastic.
I never minded the finale. I always remember not liking the episode before the finale, which is like the one that's told backwards where they go to India or something.
I do not like that episode.
I think if that ended there, I would have had problems, but that's probably like might be my least favorite episode.
I agree. I came up again and I was just like, I don't really want to watch this. That's like the only episode where I'm like, I don't need to.
That's the only one that's a skip.
Yeah.
It's a skipper for sure.
Now remind me. Okay, so I think I remember the backwards episode. I do remember that one being a weirdo one. But like, okay, so then we've talked about the Seinfeld finale. What was the difference in Curb again? I'm actually trying to remember how that did. Wasn't it like
He gets out.
He
I
gets
mean,
out on
he gets
bail,
released.
right?
He gets released. Yeah. Through a technicality.
Oh, that's right. It was like something about like the papers that he was served or something like that.
Yeah.
That Jerry was like he noticed something.
Yes, exactly. And Jerry noticed. Yeah. But they ultimately call back to the Seinfeld one, and I mean, I think when we were talking about segments and like what would you do differently or would you do a revival, to me the Seinfeld Curb tie-in is so great because you get enough of like the way that those characters interacted with each other, but then getting to see Larry be George in that little like rehearsal is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And he does like a, to the T spot on George. And like getting to see that and just to sort of say like, oh yeah, it would never work. The revival of it or whatever, it would never work.
I think we could move to just
Show
that.
me
I
the
know there
franchise?
isn't much more like, cause I kind of, this is the show me the franchise section. I kind of agree with you. It's all there. The one thing I wish they did, which I think they could have done, is I wish they would have taken all those pieces because there's a lot of like you're watching what it could have been. I wish they would have edited that and that was somehow released where we do get the bonus Seinfeld episode and we can just watch it. Because the only way you can watch it is in the context of those final 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Which is nice. You do get to see the characters, but I wish they would have just like, we made it. You can watch it. Because then I'd be satisfied. Because I do think if I was going to have them like by like, they have to do something new. They have to get the gang back together, not to quote the other show. Yeah. Do a thing that I loved about Seinfeld were the 2-parter episodes.
Yeah.
And again, I don't get in the weeds of what that is. They were in jail. What happened? This, that, would it be funny? But if they had to do something, I would love like a 2-part episode because I love those.
Yeah, 2-part episodes. I mean, I can see what you're saying. I definitely, going through and watching The Curb, sort of semi-reunion revival or whatever. Yeah, I would have. I mean, I would just made me think, like, I wonder if anybody, like, cut. It's like a YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, they probably, there's no way that there isn't a cut of it, But it probably still wouldn't be, like,
a full
same,
episode.
I
think there's chunks missing, but I think when they were doing it, it would have been cool if they were like, all right, we're going to make it and work it in, and we're also going to release this as an extra episode that they did.
Did you guys watch Glow?
I watched the first
the
season,
wrestling show?
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
But that's kind of what happens in the first season is like the whole first season, you're kind of seeing them like build this show together and like they're trying to like rehearse it and like figure out how they're going to do the first episode of Glow. and then like it's like the penultimate episode of the season is just a full episode of what they made, and it's
That's
so
pretty cool.
satisfying.
That's cool.
And like that is almost like what I think you're talking about, Fred, where you would have gotten to see like here's that full episode of Seinfeld they're producing.
I can see that.
And then you get like maybe the fallout in like the finale of like, okay, yep, we've done that now. Like, what does that mean for Larry's relationship with Cheryl or whatever, right? Or no,
Yes,
that's
Cheryl Hines, yeah.
yeah. But what was her? No, was her name Cheryl in the show?
Yeah.
It was. I'm like, I'm not making this up.
No, you're not making it.
Who's she married to?
I can't stand. I can't listen to that guy's voice. Right. Yeah, Robert F. Kennedy.
Yeah, we're just. Oh, we're not,
I actually listen to that when I fall asleep.
Cheryl, I got the Totino's pizza. Yeah, I will have to say, I did not remember Newman, the actor who played Newman, Wayne Knight. I cannot not mention his name. He's so great in everything he does in Seinfeld. My wife Claire, definitely despises Newman.
Oh, really?
Vile. I mean, he does exactly what you need to do. I will say that Claire also, before I came over here, I was like, is there anything that you would want me to mention about the show? And she said, you have to mention the like evolution of Elaine's hair.
Oh, sure.
And that is something that I think Always Sunny, well, obviously in the famous season where Mac gains a tremendous amount of weight, and he's like quote unquote looking worse than, and I mean, Mac talks about like, and he does mention Seinfeld that even like in others, like, friends, whatever, that they look better as they go along, and he wanted to actively like look worse. And I mean, obviously there's the priest character in Always Sunny that's like
Rickety Cricket.
Who's look more and more deformed, and and all just sort of craziness. But so for her, she's like, Elaine starts off with this like really frizzy hair that's always kind of frumpy and got this, like big poofy bouffant kind of on the top. And then it goes into these like really like beautifully luscious curls, and then in the last couple of seasons, it's like almost always straightened. And she just sort of like noticed, like that was one of the things that she noticed was also like style of the show.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The fits,
like Seinfeld has become like a Gen Z inspiration.
Really?
Yeah. And you'd think it's Kramer. It's George.
Yeah, George, definitely.
George is the fit inspiration, which is so wild. His hats are the dumbest hats you could ever imagine. Those really like long, thin, billed hats, and but yeah, like that, and I mean Elaine, is like a fashion icon for sure. I mean, not so much Jerry. I mean, a little bit, but like they talk about the sneaker game that Jerry had. Like he had some pretty strong sneaker games.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, like Jordans and all these kind of stuff. And that's really kind of a funny thing to come up with. Like Gen Z is like,
big sneakerheads.
Yeah, and like loving the 90s.
That's the big now. I feel they kind of have like people. I see people in the George fits. I also just see people dressed like characters from Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer. Just like the tanks with the big pants.
Yeah, I feel like the millennials, like Kramer was the fashion, like going thrifting.
Thrifty, yep.
Which it is wild. All of the clothes that Michael Richard has for that character Kramer, he bought himself. He found himself. He wears like two different kinds of shoes, I think, throughout the whole episode. And he like alters them so like he can slide. Like he has like one that like he would wear just for the episodes or the parts where he would slide through the door or whatever. But it's crazy that he like goes and he like thrifts them all himself and like and that is something like shirts of his, and that becomes there's episodes where he's selling re-thrifting, and then there's the trench coat that Jerry's dad who he like gets into business with that and stuff.
What about the pirate shirt? Are people wearing the pirate shirt? The puffy shirt.
Puffy shirt.
I mean,
puffy shirt.
I don't want to be a pirate.
Oh yeah, so Elaine's hair, like the genesis. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, like for me, like Julia Louis-Dreyfus is so incredibly beautiful.
Oh yeah,
it
still looks great.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. But like in Seinfeld, like she's so funny. Her timing is just impeccable, and she's like to me like Mount Rushmore of celebrity women.
She's like, I think. I mean, and I know we're in like the show me the franchise thing, but I do think like she's like the underrated.
Oh, 100%.
Sure.
Like the secret MVP of the
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
As great as everybody else is, and they are all great.
Yeah.
it's definitely like,
You miss a huge element without her.
yeah, I would have loved to, and I think we kind of got this. I mean, I think that was the genesis of her career, though. It was like an Elaine spinoff would have been maybe a pretty interesting thing to follow. Of like, it's like she had gotten out of jail, but
Yes, that's
but like, you know,
that was kind of a curse, though. I mean, the Michael Richards show, like that could have been really great. He was like kind of like a detective, but then they just couldn't help themselves and just not make him exactly like Kramer.
Right.
And, like
Yeah,
Michael
right.
Richards is so incredibly talented. You know, Jason Alexander had multiple shows that failed after Seinfeld. I mean, it really wasn't until the New Adventures of Old Christine, where like it was like a curse. I mean, they talked about it, the Seinfeld curse.
yeah.
Where Elaine, you know, well, not Elaine, but you know, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, like actually like has a successful, and she wins an Emmy for that show. I'm
The
pretty
New
sure.
Adventures of Old Christine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it is, right? Yeah.
But then it's like, yeah, it leads to Veep, which is just like, I mean, that's another great show of like supporting cast,
100%.
hilarious characters, but
100%.
still, she's the glue person in that show, and like, it doesn't work without her. I don't
No, yeah, and I mean, she holds the mantle of the number one on the call sheet like incredibly well in that show for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure.
No,
Yeah.
it's great though, I think, and yeah, she's just awesome in this. So, I mean, that's maybe a one, but yeah, I don't know. Would
I mean,
spinoffs have ever worked for anybody?
I don't know. I mean, the Joey spinoff was terrible for Friends. I mean, I do think Elaine, that could have worked. You know, you could have seen her in a different world, but I just don't. For me, I think the spinoff is Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean,
Spinoff, yeah.
yeah, that is the George. I mean, he just takes that. You know, he plays George, and you know, he sort of it's the meta realityness. Like, you know, George is Larry's surrogate on the show. And then he is just like, okay, well, I'm going to, you know, take that same ethos and I'm going to make this other show and I'm going to be myself, and allow myself, I'm going to be the heightened or the amped up version of Larry David. So like, I think it's a hard one to talk about like franchises because it like does kind of have like the best franchise that it could have in Curb, and allowing itself to like have a little bit of that touch base with the revival that it has on Seinfeld. Because when Larry and Jerry are on Curb together, you can tell what Seinfeld was. It was those two in a room talking, joking around.
Yeah.
When they're making fun of Jason Alexander's book, you know, and like how thin it is, you know, and the way that they talk is just like this perfect comedic loop where they're like sort of circling around and around, and then they get to the button. It's like there's like always a camera. There's got to be like this feeling of there's always a camera on those.
Yeah,
two.
right.
For sure.
And it's interesting, like, because there was a famous Super Bowl ad where talk about franchise things where Jason Alexander and Jerry Seinfeld kind of came back and did like themselves as like a, you know, like a spoof or whatever,
Right.
and it just felt weird. It was just like, oh, this seems like you guys are just like, as the kids say nowadays, you're doing too much. You know, like it was like, oh, okay. It felt like the Seinfeld Chronicles where they were just, I was like, this is not quite working.
Yeah.
You know, for whatever reason, but yeah, where there was like they were trying to have a grievance about a thing that it's like no. But I think the grievance thing. Can I talk about my favorite show?
This is your airings of the grievances, right?
This is my airing of grievances. No, this is my feats of strength or part of it. So when you asked about like what favorite episodes are, that's really hard for me. But I did a one for pre Larry leaving and one post. And to me, the caveat that it's not, these aren't necessarily just my favorite episodes, but to me they're like that are like the quintessential what like that sort of describe the area. So the big salad is my pre-Larry leaving that.
Whoa, are we jumping into power rankings all of this?
Are we?
Let's do it.
Can we do that, or do we need?
No, I think we can just say this is the power ranking.
All right,
This is the power rankings. Go
All right.
for it now.
All right.
And we love that you did post and pre Larry.
Yeah,
So let's hear it.
So Larry involved in the show, to me, it's very difficult to say pick just one, but for me personally, it's the big salad. Because it's the example of the smallest of grievances turned into basically the entire episode, right? So George buys the big salad. The woman that he's dating gives it to Elaine. Elaine thanks George's girlfriend, and George cannot get past himself that he didn't get credit for buying the big salad. And to me, like, that is like the extreme pettiness and like the neuroses of it. And then he finally, he's got to figure out and find ways to get credit without seeming like he's trying to get credit. And of course he fails miserably and just like a landmine blows up in his face about it. And Elaine is like, fine, you get the credit for the big salad or whatever. And then it like ruins his relationship with the woman too. Like he doesn't like that to me is like the ethos of the show, where it's like, that's the most important thing, not relationships with people. Yeah. Like, it's like, I've been wronged and I want to set that right, but I don't want to do it in a way that I come across as petty, even though I'm being the most petty you could possibly be. Yeah. The big salad and like the whole, just like they took a term. I mean, there's also the, like, oh, these pretzels are making me thirsty. That's another one where like, it's just like, it's a simple line that gets repeated in a way that's like, it just, I don't, whenever I order a salad, I think about the big salad. What was in that salad? It's the big salad. So that's my top Larry involved in this show episode.
Okay. What are your next two then? Let's keep going with Larry then.
Okay, so with Larry, that I haven't talked about, the Kenny Rogers roaster is I think Kenny Rogers roasters might be. Let me just check and see if that was pre-Larry or
that might be like season 8.
I think it might be.
It's 7 or 8.
Let me see what it is. Okay, so it's season 8. So that's without Larry. Yeah. So that's. What else would I put up there? I would say that. And it's talked about too, but the Chinese restaurant.
Oh yeah.
That's another example of taking something really, really small and making a whole episode out of it. And the back and forth, and it's, set in just one spot. And there's the stuff that's happening, the bits that are happening with the phone. And George, once again, is like, they're trying to figure out, and it talks about the era that it was at, like where you had to use the payphone. People, was this girl going to come on the date or not? What was the deal with it? And just that they like took the risk of like, kind of making that mundane thing, and it's really like, if you were to put that on stage, like just straight up on stage, it would be a great one-act play. It's perfect for that.
I would almost be surprised if that doesn't exist as a one-act play. Someone has performed that.
Yeah, so that's another, like, Larry involved in it. Interestingly, Milwaukee connection to Seinfeld. So the actor who played the maestro is from Milwaukee.
Oh wow!
And a long time ago.
Do you know his name? I'll look it up.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't remember his name, but he lived in Milwaukee, and a long time ago, I had a comedy show called the Retro Comedy Show. What was his name?
Mark Metcalf.
Yeah, Mark Metcalf. Sorry that I forgot that. But yeah, he was in Animal House and other things. He's a really, really great guy.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, connection there. I actually taught improv to his son, and that was kind of a little bit how I knew him. So we did this show called Retro Comedy Show, and we would do, old sitcoms and a black box theater style. So all the props were like cardboard, like there's an episode where there's a pig in it, and we always had like a cardboard box and we just wrote pig on it. It's like we did the script faithfully and the costumes as faithful as we could, because we could do those things, but then all the extra stuff that we couldn't do, we just like, okay, we're gonna make it really as basic as possible. And there was funny in that, but we were able to do an episode of Seinfeld, and one of them with the maestro in it, and he reprised his role in the episode that we did, and it's the one where Kramer spills the coffee on him, and he, and Jackie Childs, and that famous Jackie Childs, so good, and Mark Metcalf was such an awesome guy. He had the costume, the exact costume that he had on the episode, and he wore it, and he did it for free. I mean, it was like an electric night. I mean, I think we had like 175 tickets sold.
Yeah.
You know, it was like just packed to the gills, and we did this thing, and it was just like, it felt like, you know, if I didn't do anything comedy related wise, I would be good.
Sure.
And you know, and we did a lot of stuff afterwards, but that was an insane moment. And it was one of those things where that Jackie Child's character, I loved it. Who told you to put the bomb on? Did I tell you to put the bomb on? Who told you to put the bomb on? So nobody. It was like some other like random person. But yeah, so that was a great like Seinfeld moment, and like just having the maestro come out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did the perfection. It was like watching him do it on TV. It was nuts.
That is so cool.
So that holds it like a special place in my heart, and like that episode is pretty great. But I will say, post Larry David, my top post Larry David episode is the Yada Yada episode. Yeah. You know, the structure of that episode is great. They love the yada yada. George is dating this woman who yada yadas, and they're like, yada yada is sex, and you know, all that stuff. And then later on in the episode, everybody's using the yada yada yada. But then later on, when you find out what she yada yada, you know, she's like a criminal. She's like stealing things, and like all this stuff, and it's like such a great reveal. And like obviously the yada yada is like iconic, but like I love the structure of like, they love the yada yada. It's great. It becomes this really great thing, and then all of a sudden it takes a turn, and the yada yada is like becomes a really bad, you know, really bad situation.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh, that's
great.
good. That's good choices. Good
Thank
choices,
you.
and I love
Thank you.
the
It's hard.
personal
I mean,
story. Oh yeah, especially like I think we were talking before recording. Like I keep thinking in moments. I'm like I love that, and then I'm like, what else happened in that episode? Oh, that's good too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, those are awesome picks. I love the Mark Metcalf tie back too, because his wife owned a restaurant. She doesn't anymore. It was in Mequon, right down the road from where my parents live. And I remember going in there, and there's like signed pictures like that he would have of like all these other actors, and he did have a lot of Seinfeld.
Yeah,
he had Jason Alexander. Jerry Seinfeld like on the wall, like signed pictures where it was like them together, and it was just like, it's so crazy.
Which is funny because I'm pretty sure at the Tomazzo's Mequon location they have the picture of George, or they did, like where he's like in his underwear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
So a lot of pictures of Jason Alexander and Mequon.
Yeah, it really was. The restaurant is called Libby Montana's. I think it's still
Libby Montana's. Oh,
you know that place?
Because that was right on the Brown Deer border. So yeah, that's where I finished high school.
That was Mark Metcalf's wife. I think they divorced now. I think her name was Libby or something, or it was short for something else.
Sure.
But yeah, so
I used to go to Taylor and Dunn's a little further down. The Irish
right
place.
next door.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at this, Fred. We know all the same spots, right?
I know.
This big Mark Metcalf run. Right?
Yeah.
What are your power rankings for episodes?
So it's funny. I was like not really thinking of just like, oh, these are my favorite. I was trying to be like thinking of things that represented Seinfeld, and I did have the Chinese restaurant on there because I'm like, oh, this is like a bottle episode in one spot where it's so funny, but not much happens. Show about nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't have to bring that one up.
Yeah. That is a good, the show about nothingness of it,
So I love a 2-part episode. That's what I keep going back to. So I have the bottle deposit.
Yeah, the bottle deposit we've talked about a little bit earlier, yes.
Brad Garrett in the bottle deposit as the auto mechanic who is so obsessed because that is a thing. Whenever I take my mechanic to my mechanic, there is that little like, are you taking care of this thing?
100%. Brad Garrett's really good in that episode. He steals the car, and then of course there's that button at the end where Newman is at the farmer's daughter, and you know his like iconic like when he's running, you know, like, oh my gosh, that's a wild episode.
Yep. You got Clint Howard as the dad, I'm pretty sure, on the farm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's some pretty good usage of montage in Seinfeld, but them collecting the bottles and stuff.
Yes.
Each little one is a great little, like different kind of thing.
Yes, Newman, you magnificent son of a bitch.
Yep.
So look, I love a trip to Del Boca Vista. And I love the Cadillac 2-part episode, but I went with the pen. Because I love like Jack Klompus.
Yeah, Jack Klompus.
The pen, Jerry.
The pen, Jerry. Jack Klompus's the actor, his voice,
Yes.
unbelievable. But he's like not even that old in that episode. Like he looks really, really old and acts really old. But I think he was like in his early 60s which is like, nowadays you think like, 60 is like not that old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's old, but it's not like that old.
Mm-hmm.
But
60 in like 1990 felt so much older than.
You toe touching a little bit?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hello.
Yeah, I was giving you a little footsie right there.
Jack Klompus and the pen though,
Yes.
and all the like little because then you like what's kind of cool is because you can see Jerry's dad and his mom interacting, and they have their own Seinfeld like world with all of their neighbors and stuff like that, and the idiosyncrasies that they have. Where it's not just Jerry and the four of them. It's like the world that they live in has all of these examples. Is the pen the episode where his eyes gets dilated?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's the one.
And Elaine is high. I
Yes,
think on
'cause-
back suppressants or
because she's been
muscle
sleeping on
relaxers.
the
the back
couch or whatever.
Yep, the roll out couch. Yeah.
Who's the friend of Jerry's parents that he's like, what? You don't want to be a polar bear anymore? It's too cold for you?
Oh, I don't remember. What's that character's name?
That's the senior Bridges, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I was trying to
Speaking
remember.
of the dads.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just trying to think.
The tip calculator is a great thing, though. I mean, it's like
Yes.
that's like an example for me of like the tip calculator. It's just a calculator, right? But that's like a Jerry. That's like a Jerry world, but with his parents, right? And the guy who played Jerry's dad wasn't originally Jerry's dad, too. He got recast.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I think one episode he shows up as the other guy or whatever. And
Yeah.
I believe so. That sounds right. But I love his dad. I love his mom. I love the parents. I think I said it before.
Yeah, the parents are
Those
great.
are like my favorite side characters on both sides. Which goes into my final favorite is the shower head, because we've been talking about things that just stick with you.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm like staying at a hotel and I turn on that water and I'm like feeling it, I'm like low flow.
Yeah, low flow. The Commando 3000 or whatever, the one at the shower head that just blows them away.
But that is also, make sure my notes here, that is also the episode where the Costandas think that the Seinfelds don't want them to move to Del Boca Vista.
We're moving to Del Boca Vista, lock, stock, and barrel, and there's nothing you can do about
They're
it.
trying to keep us out.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, the animosity that the Costanzas and the Seinfelds have is awesome.
Yeah.
Is so funny.
Talk about spite, right?
Yeah, by 100%. Like they do not like each other at all.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Del Boca Vista, much like Tuscany, there's
Yes.
just no
no room.
There's no room.
There's not a single apartment, not one. Once again, like he wouldn't have wanted to have an apartment in Tuscany unless he couldn't have.
Right.
Like, why was the maestro saying, does he not like? I mean, and I love that they never get into the details of that or whatever. But yeah, those are great episodes for sure. Iconic, definitely. The pen, huge. Oh my god,
It's what the astronauts use.
the astronauts use. And then that's another callback. He talks about the pen multiple times. Every time they go to Del Boca Vista, they talk about the pen.
How's that pen, Jerry?
How's that pen, Jerry? It's a good pen. I don't want the pen. Take it. It's yours. I don't want it.
Why'd you have to take his pen, Jerry?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely. Those are good choices.
I feel like I need to revisit so much.
Top that shit, Tom.
I don't think I can. I did want to follow up on Jerry's dad. So in the first season, he was played by an actor named Phil Bruns, who was in The Stakeout. That's the first time we see Jerry's dad.
Okay.
Then it was the Barney Martin who ended up becoming Jerry's dad for the full series.
The Barney, like the episode where he gets he's getting checked out by the doctor and he loses his wallet, and the interaction between he and the doctor is so great. And like he's leaving, and of course the wallet is like tucked under the couch or whatever.
Yeah.
But he finds his wallet many episodes later. It's not the same episode where they find the wallet in the couch. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like there's like so many things where they like
For how individual each episode is, they're still like tying it, making like a web of callbacks and story. That's awesome.
It's so intricate. Everything is. I'll go quick through mine, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm not as intimately familiar or have that greatest of a memory of all these, but there are certainly moments that stick out for me, or at least thread lines, and they still help me fill in the gaps if I can't quite get there. But the first one is definitely, I mentioned earlier, there was one episode that I saw as a child, or I kind of like encountered as a child, that really, stuck with me, which was the Frogger. Yeah, and it's that George has his high score on the Frogger game.
Yep,
he wants to move the game, but the whole issue is he needs to unplug the game or to get it out of the pizza joint, right?
Yes.
And so he's like coming up with this whole scheme of how he can like move this. And doesn't he like contract out the bad guy from Fargo?
Yes.
Peter Stormare.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, 100%.
And he's like Kramer's like, I got a guy. Like, help me with this.
Yes.
And I love when they're like, oh, there's all this traffic here. You got to get across. And George's like, wait, this looks familiar.
Yes.
I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's the only other second actor who was in Seinfeld who was also part of the Jurassic Park universe.
Oh,
I'm sure there's more.
Which one is Stormare?
He's in the second one.
Yeah.
He gets eaten by the compies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's like
one of the guys with
soldier.
what's his name?
Yeah, he goes off on his own to go to the bathroom. He trips over, and then there's another guy who's like listening to the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Like doesn't hear him screaming as he's getting bitten by the little tiny guys. Yeah, for sure.
It's just such a funny conclusion of that episode, though, where it's just George trying to get through traffic, and
the
I just loved that there was like all this planning. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is the first episode that really grabbed me, so I feel like it's just stuck with me forever. And I'm like why? He tried so hard to do this. I was like, at what point do you give up? And then the poor game just gets destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the overhead shot where it looks like Frogger.
The directing of that is really great.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
I loved it. And I was like, that was the first time I'm like, okay, this show might have something. I think I like.
I love it.
I'll just breeze through number 2 because I think the contest, you mentioned it already. We said enough about it. It's such a brilliant episode.
Yeah.
I'm going for low hanging fruit there. And then for the other one that I'm going to mention, because I wanted to mention the marine biologist, because I do think the moment where he pulls out the golf ball, and Kramer goes, "Is that a Titleist?" You're remembering Kramer is on the beach hitting these golf balls into the ocean. It's just all these storylines that came to a
and you have to remember, you have to know, remember that part of it. They don't like it's telegraphed, but not like that's a great moment.
It is.
And to think that they didn't have that like the night before they filmed it, and then like they wrote it, and then he performed it is kind of a wild scenario.
A perfect conclusion to that episode.
Oh, so good.
So memorable.
But then it just goes to show like the writing process is like, it's an evolving thing, and like you might not always have everything. You have to be open to the moment of like, having something really good, and then then being available to like change it. Or like make the connections. I mean, there are so many connections that are in the show that it seems like kind of ridiculous how many connections that they do and they weave in a short amount of time. I was just watching the episode with the slicer. The episode's called The Slicer.
Sure.
And Kramer gets this meat slicer, and it's all because he's trying to eat this sandwich at the Monk's Deli, and it just falls apart. And he's like, I've just been living years with this shoddy meat, and he's like, he's throwing Jerry's sandwich off the side, and Jerry's like, me too. And then he gets the slicer, but then, that leads to Elaine, and she needs the slicer because her next door neighbor left the alarm on, and they try to turn the alarm off by shorting the circuit, but they have a cat and the automatic feeder doesn't work. It's like, there's little domino pieces, and he like shaves the meat really thin to go into the door. And then Elaine really was like, can I borrow this slicer? And then, it's just like how these things go. And she then is like, opening her mail with the slicer, and then she's like, these shoes are uneven, and she shaves off a part of her heel with the slicer. And those kinds of things that happen, I'm just like, wow, this is like, they got there. They
cooking, and
they got there. Yep, they're just pulling it together. It's like this thing and that thing and this thing all around this meat slicer that Kramer gets,
But I think it is, though. It's something that speaks to like when the storylines all start singing, right?
Yeah.
And bringing it together. And like the last thing I wanted to call out, I don't know that this is necessarily like a top 3 for me, but it probably would just miss it. It's because it's like the Chinese restaurant. It's the parking garage.
Yes.
Oh, the
I
parking
love
garage is
parking
great.
garage,
Yeah.
Because right, it's like Jerry has to pee.
Yeah.
It's like George or Elaine has a date or something like that. They need to get home for.
Yeah, George has his parents. He does something with his parents that he has to do to get the car back to them and stuff like that. Yeah, and there is a moment at the end when they're trying to jam. Kramer's got this huge box that he's carrying. And he's trying to jam it in. It's also like the cars that they have. Like Kramer's got this like huge boat of a car, and he hits his head on the in the take that they use.
Yeah,
he hits his head on the trunk door. And it's all basically their own like natural reactions, but they are in their characters, and they still stay in that take, and that's the take that they use. And they're like the turnover of the car is so iconic, where and it works. But yeah, the garage scene, he's got the goldfish and
Oh, that's it. Elaine needs to get her goldfish into water. That's right.
Exactly.
Because I think isn't the whole thing with the car not starting at the end? This might be part of the lore that they dressed up, but they said that was an accident. The car was supposed to start, but
it was an accident, and it just sounded, and it just worked perfectly, and it was better. It's one of those things where just like the whole series being able to pick up, yes, there are things that are really great about it, but there also are some things that are ephemeral and kind of lucky about it happening. I feel like you have to do that to be really great. You have to have some luck on your side.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. And I think it's just such a brilliant episode because, again, it is something that could be like a stage play where it's like, here, you're spending the whole episode just looking for the car. And who hasn't had that moment where you spent 10 minutes in a parking garage? Where the hell?
And they heighten it. Jerry gets arrested. George gets arrested by the security guard at the parking lot, the police officer of the parking, whatever. And they try to corroborate their stories in a short period of time, and they've messed up. And there's a lot of great things about that.
So good.
But I will say, in terms of characters that we haven't talked about, we talked a little bit about Kenny Bania. Love Kenny Bania. But we haven't talked about Putty. And I feel like we can't not
That's right.
talk about Putty, especially his sort of Gen Z influence right now.
Yeah.
And the whole raw dogging it on the airplane
Yes.
is all from Putty. And it's crazy. When Putty was, because he was first had a couple of episodes that he was on, and then they bring him back for this whole arc of he and Elaine breaking up and all this stuff like that, which is so brilliant. I love their chemistry about basically not having chemistry, but still together is so amazing. That's another kind of meta too, but yeah, the whole and that's where vegetable lasagna comes from. That's the guy who's sitting next to him. I have a name. Vegetable lasagna over you, but and
Patrick Warburton, right?
Yeah, Patrick Warburton plays Putty,
He talks like this all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Are you, so you're not gonna read anything? No. No. And he's so masterful in that subdued performance, but the raw dog where he just stares at the back of the seat on the plane, and that's like a Gen Z thing now, or Gen Alpha maybe. I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm old now.
We all are.
People don't know who we're talking about. We're talking about the voice of Kronk.
Yes.
From The Emperor's New Groove.
Thank
Had to
you.
bring it down.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was he has definitely had a good voice acting career.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing.
Family Guy and
If you go on Soren in Disney World, he's the captain. He's all right, well on plane.
Yeah, he's got a great voice.
yeah.
But the whole no, so good.
Anything else we want to call out here? Or are we ready to get to the end of our episode? I think we might have said all we've yada-yada'd over the best parts, but before we let you go, James, is there anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, I think probably people might be able to see this May 31st. No Dice, my D&D show is going to be at the Sugar Maple, 8 p.m. You can get tickets at www.nodice.live. It's going to be kind of an interesting show. It's going to be a musical.
Oh.
Oops, all Bard edition. Ooh. So all the performers will have some sort of instrument like a triangle or a kazoo or something crazy, a slide whistle or whatever. And that'll be really fun. That's been fun to continue doing that. And we do shows pretty much every month now at the Sugar Maple. So
cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so www.nodice.live.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Somebody got .com, bastards. But yeah,
Excellent show. I always love checking it out.
Yeah, so please check it out. No dice.
No dice.
Fred, how about you?
I have a show on the 23rd of May. Well, okay, great. I will be opening for Young and the Scriptless with my group Fractal. That will be at the Interchange Theater. You can get tickets at interchangetheater.com. And that's what I got coming up recently.
In fact, Fred, that will be the night of this episode releasing. So if you're listening,
Get on to the theater.
so if you're listening this day, go check out Fred tonight. You guys know me. I am just going to plug our podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate and review it. You can join our Patreon now, just $1 a month. You can get exclusive bonus content. We have one bonus episode per month. Fred, I believe we are finally fulfilling the long talked about summer blockbuster drafts for this month.
Let's talk about it.
That'll probably be coming up here in the next, if you're listening as the release is happening. It's come up in the next week. But otherwise, go check that out on our Patreon. Special thanks to Nick Spitza and Mike Schwantz for our opening and closing theme songs. And stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be talking about... What are we talking about, Fred?
Do you believe in magic? In the palm of your hand. Is that what we have? You can put it in if it's not. Or things around.
We'll be talking about Magic the Gathering.
Oh, Magic the Gathering, cool.
Fun little card game. We've been big on the card games recently.
Yeah, just a little card game. You know, not very well known.
Game. Just a little.
Probably some people are really chill about, you know.
We've been really hard on the card games recently, so we're excited to talk about it. Just the virtual card games. We were talking about Pokemon.
Yeah.
The trading card game before this.
Blatro.
Yeah. Oh, and Balatro. Fred's deep in that. By this point, he's probably like not even doing anything else. He's doing all Balatro.
I quit my job. I'm just making it off the money I get in Balatro.
Can you get real money in that game?
No. And in fact, you lose your money after every game.
Oh my gosh. But thanks for coming on here, James.
Thanks for having me,
Appreciate
Tom.
all your
Appreciate
insights. It was awesome talking with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you guys all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Got no cares, 'cause all I wanna do is charge my